All right, looks like the waiting room has slowed down, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our July Missouri Open Door Technology Series. Today's topic is comfort and confidence for personal care. My name is Angelina Alpert. I am a program area specialist at the University of Missouri Kansas City Institute for Human Development. And I am joined by Scout Mary from Missouri Assistive Technology. So for today, I will do a overview of Missouri No Wrong Door, talk a little bit about the mod series, and then pass it over to Scout for supports for personal care. So No Wrong Door is um, a framework in Missouri aimed to transform the way people access services in the community. So it supports individuals to make and caregivers to make decisions on complete and accurate information about their options for anyone seeking long-term services and supports, regardless of their age, income, or disability. Missouri has had the No Wrong Door grant for a couple of years now, and we have many No Wrong Door partners, as you can see here. And we work with all of these partners to help make Missouri's systems easier to navigate for individuals and their families. Missouri Assistive Technology is one of those partners, and they have been doing this Missouri Open Door Technology series with us for quite a few years now. So a little bit about the mods. So our goal is to integrate services into support systems. So on the far left-hand side, you have the three circles where each person exists within the context of their family and their community. In the middle, when a person starts to receive formal government paid services, it can sometimes unintentionally seclude that person from the family and the community that they want to be a part of. So, our goal is to talk about and think about supports and services in a different way. That way, those different types of services and supports are integrated throughout a person's life. That way, they are able to still be a part of the family and the community of their choosing. So this is that star of those integrated supports and services. So we have personal strengths and assets. So the skills, knowledge, or life experiences that a person has, their personal belongings or resources, their relationships, whether that's family, friends, or acquaintances, anybody that's willing to lend a hand. We then go to the other side and we have technology, which is the personal technology, everyday technology, assistive or adaptive or environmental technology. And that's what we talk about during the tech series that you are at. We also have community-based, which are the places in the community that anybody would have access to. So your businesses, your parks, your faith-based communities, any group or membership organizations, and local services or public resources. Lastly, we have those eligibility specific services. So those are going to be ones where there is some form of eligibility requirement, whether it's age, geography, income level, employment status, but they are the government paid services. And we talk about those during our Missouri Open Door Benefit Series. So all of this comes from Charting the Life Course, or CTLC, which is a framework and set of tools to help you think differently about your vision of a good life, setting high expectations, and integrating multiple types of supports. It helps you organize your ideas, visions, and goals, as well as problem solve, navigate, and advocate for supports. Um, You'll see here some more of our icons, and throughout some of our presentations, you'll see these icons or hear some of the concepts that we talk about. Um, And so we're going to go ahead and pass it over to Scout, and he is going to talk about comfort and confidence for personal care.
All right. Thanks, Angelina. Um, yeah, so today is all about personal care. The We are gonna get up close and personal with some of it. All right, so the kind of some broad brush definitions of personal care can include both physical assistance and consumer products. And these are around topics like hygiene and grooming. Uh, so personal care can include activities like bathing, grooming, dressing, mobility. Mobility often refers to transfers in personal care, but it can be just getting around the home. For people with any kind of limitation, a support person can provide personal care. Uh, and, if we look at those individuals and we look at their wants and needs, a lot of times we can use a device, assistive technology, to support either part of that task or the entire task. So, that's kind of what we'll be looking at today. So we can hop to the next slide. Um, so when we talk about personal care, the tasks are often called activities of daily living or ADLs, a term that you've probably heard. So when a support person is needed, they are often performed by family members or trained aides. Um, so when it is a device that is providing that extra support, they are often called aids for daily living. Yes, also ADLs, um, just to keep things nice and confusing. So, we will talk about pretty much everything we talk about will be an aid for daily living. But as we categorize things, whether it's here or anyplace else, sometimes things can fit in more than one category. And the topics that I'll be specifically focusing on today will be hygiene, grooming, mobility, eating, and some health reminders. So each one of those will get some topics that we'll talk about. Um, all right. Um, so I wanted, this slide is titled The Scope. So, we are going to talk about some devices for hygiene or grooming, but I mean, everyone is so different, right? We all have our strengths, we all have our limitations, and there is absolutely no way I could cover everything in personal care in 45 minutes. So I won't keep you here for 3 days. So I will cover a few of these devices. Um, and in a lot of this series, we've talked about the range of technology that, it can be something very, very simple or something quite complex. And it all falls into the realm of assistive technology. Often, for one task, you can have that full range of options. So I will try to throw in some high tech, but for personal care, honestly, a lot of it is low to mid tech. So, this is kind of what we'll look at today. The last thing I want to say on this slide is if you're working with somebody, you may have seen a device, here or someplace else in your life that you think will be a really good fit for your person. Um, and it may be, but if it is not, if you want some support, that's why we are here. Our job is helping people find what really works for them. So, this will be my point to say, feel free to reach out when you have specific needs, not just for overview trainings. So, yeah, we can hop into hygiene, bathing, and showering. Um, So I tried to put a range of things on this first slide. So the shower chair in the middle is a rolling shower chair commode seat. It looks fairly simple, I will tell you. Unfortunately, it is quite expensive. However, these can be made in a lot of ways that, have footrests, have seat belts, have, the commode option, which is really nice. They are a little, like I said, a little pricey, but they do require a roll-in shower for them to be functional. You have to be able to get the person in and out. That's the whole idea of anything with wheels. The Hoyer lift is the image, the first image. You can get a sling that is mesh, so you could actually shower somebody in the Hoyer lift, but often they might be to transfer somebody to a shower seat that is in the showering area that has very significant mobility limitations. Um, and then on the far side is a transfer bench. So a very simple device. um, this one is positioned more for a picture than probably for actual use. You would want the two outside legs to be closer to the bathtub, so that the person using this would have the full length of seat, or as much as possible inside the tub, that they could sit on while showering. What you cannot see is the 2 feet inside the tub are actually suction cups so that they stay nice and secure. Another thing just to note is that transfer benches like this with there's a back on them, which is appropriate for a transfer bench. That back can come out and be put on the other side. Because some people will look at that and say, oh, it won't work for my tub because my controls are, behind this. But you pull out the back, put it in the other side, and it is perfect. The handle goes on the inside. It can help the person slide over. But just, also to note, many different kinds of transfer benches. They can be they can be all plastic. They can have sliding seats. So if a person has skin that might tear easily, or just doesn't have the strength to slide over, the seat can actually slide on rails instead of the person sliding on the seat. So all kinds of options for getting into the bathtub. What I didn't put on here, and I kind of wish I would have, was the bath lift. Um, there's a quick question. Does the rolling shower chair have a back that adjusts? Some of them do, yes. And they can have the notches so you can kind of lean it back, which is kind of cool. Because some people, don't want the water in their face, and so you could lean them back to wash hair. But there is a bath lift that has a remote control. It's very cool for people who want to submerge in a tub, but don't have that strength to get up and down. And it will just lift you right up to the edge of the tub. It won't go down if there's not enough battery to come back up, which I think is a nice safety feature. The majority of these devices paid for by Medicaid. Um, I would say some, like a Hoyer lift, which isn't really a bathing device, can be paid for by Medicaid. I believe the rolling shower chair, the in the middle, could be paid for by insurance. Transfer benches I've never heard of being paid for by insurance. All right, we can hop to the next slide. So, more bathing and showering devices here. I did include grab bars here. Grab bars, of course, can be used many places, not just in the shower. And I actually said to Angelina, I'm a big enough nerd that I could do a whole presentation on grab bars. Again, we don't need 40 minutes. Probably most of you don't need 40 minutes on grab bars, but if anybody does, I am here for you. Um, uh, but having a well-placed grab bar can make a huge difference. Um, and I get the I get the people who say people come in and they'll say, "Well, I'm not that bad yet," and my response is like, "What are you waiting for, right? Like, do you want to wait until you fall to get a grab bar? Grab bars are great for anyone. They're there. It's just a stabilizing spot to hold. I would encourage everyone to get a grab bar. Yes, right. That's what Lisa is saying. They help everyone in her house, even though they were installed for one person. Right. It is just an easy place, whether you're washing your feet or, whatever. Um, The same with the handheld shower, right? Most showers now have a shower head that comes off. Whether you're washing the dog, washing your feet, or in a seated position and you want to have that shower closer. I usually encourage to have a second location with that handheld shower, so that if somebody is in a seated position, they could have that shower head closer, and that way they can use one or both hands, whatever they have functional, to do their washing. But some other things that are a little less common, but still quite simple, are a dispenser. I worked with one family, and the daughter's kind of only issue in the shower was she didn't know um, how much soap to get, how much shampoo, that kind of thing. And having an automatic, well, the one we looked at was an automatic dispenser. This one is actually a lever dispenser that is shown on the picture. But either way, you don't have to pick up a bottle, open a cap, turn it upside down, squeeze it. Or, I mean, the pumps are simpler, but these automatic ones are, take away even some of that. Um, just for getting those right amounts of soap or shampoo. Uh, and then the last item I have pictured here is just a big curved brush for washing your back. So kind of whatever um, shoulder action the person has, they could they can wrap that around the side of their body, over the top of their shoulder, and wash all their parts, even if they cannot lift their arm up. So again, there are just a wide variety of needs, and I'm trying to just cover a few things to, get everybody thinking about the huge variety of supports that are out there. All right, we can go on to oral care. So it's funny, I put this slide deck together and then met with a young man who we were talking about some employment supports, but then we got down to just some personal things. And I said, is there anything you want to be more independent at doing? And he said, no. And I was like, what about brushing your teeth? And he said, I can brush my teeth. And uh, I said, can how do you get the toothpaste on your toothbrush? And he said, oh, my parents do that. And I said, there are some simple ways that you could probably do it yourself. And I told him about an automatic toothpaste dispenser. And he was just like, what? I said, but there's something even, like lower tech. The next picture has a great name, the toothbrush pillow. So it's got a circular hole that will hold your toothbrush upright when you're not using it, and then a toothbrush shaped indent that holds your toothbrush, so it doesn't tip over when you're putting your toothpaste on it. So whether you have vision loss, whether you have just a one hand to use, or maybe even a tremor, any kind of issue where your toothbrush just might fall over while you're putting the toothpaste on. This little guy can hold your toothbrush upright. You just pop it out of there, brush your teeth, and then it will actually hold your toothbrush when you're done. Um, I do want to point out this toothbrush dispenser, I think probably comes from out of the country because one of the tubes they have says, think your teeth. So while we all think our teeth, I'm going to keep moving on down the pictures. Um, I wanted to throw in this picture I have. It is it shows a sink with a bottle of kind of shampoo on the side, but the on the faucet there's a bottle that's been cut and it is making an extender. Some people have a hard time reaching the water, and they actually, you can purchase an extender or you can buy a different, get a different sink set up, but making one is obviously the cheapest route to go. And it just brings that water closer to you. So, again, for a variety of issues, this could be a solution. And then the last picture is, I forget what it's called. It's like an automatic toothbrusher or something, but it is, you just put it's a dental, kind of like a dental tray. You put toothpaste in there, auto brush, thank you, um, and turn it on, and it will um, like massage your teeth to brush them, but it does it so the user does not go back and forth. They just put this in their mouth and it will brush a person's teeth, and it is accepted by the ADA, not the Americans with Disabilities Act, but the American Dental Association. So, you know, again, just lots of ways to get those jobs done. All right, let's go ahead. All right, let's talk about some toileting. Um, so when I was giving out a lot of durable medical equipment, lots and lots of people would come in and request a stool riser. So it's a great device, clamps on, hopefully, to your toilet seat. There's a little dial in the front that does the clamping. This one has handles, so you've got that extra boost to get up, and it is for folks that have trouble getting up off the toilet. However, next, um, when you are sitting on a stool riser, you often are putting yourself in a compromised position for elimination, right? Because the best position to be in to poop is having your knees slightly above your hips, right? And you would have to be um, uh, you would have to be really long-legged to have your knees still above your hips. Um, and so this image has a footrest. So our next image is a stool, right? So the squatty potty that's why it was invented. This is not a squatty potty, but which isn't it a brilliant name? This is just a toilet stool. But there's all kinds of things. But it is one of those things, what we don't want to do is get a support that works for one limitation and actually create a different issue, right? So, like thinking about the not only the whole person, but the whole process can also be important. So we'll move on to some other supports for toileting still. Um, you know, I I think it is something that for a lot of people can be difficult to discuss. Um, all right. Shelly got her kids a squatty potty for Christmas. But really, it is a process that, we're all performing, and, it is an area that in anything in the bathroom, we need to make sure people aren't falling, because that's a safety issue, but also that our hygiene is complete. Um, because, it is an area where skin breakdown is one thing, but also just, nobody wants to smell uh, unclean. Um, so there is actually a tool that you can put toilet paper, you kind of squeeze it and the toilet paper will go in and you can wipe and then it will release the toilet paper into the toilet. Um, Another kind of, and it runs around 25 or $30. But at the dollar store, you can also buy tongs and you can put toilet paper in the tongs and use that as an extended handle. There's all kinds of ways to get it done. Um, I personally, rather than the stool riser, I like the toilet safety frame, which connects to the back, right the same place that the toilet seat connects, and just gives you handles. Now, if you don't have good shoulder strength or have enough upper arm strength, it might not be enough support, and that stool riser is something that can go in conjunction with the toilet safety frame. Um, but I like this because it's also not connected to the seat. So if you're leaning one side or the other, this doesn't get loose. Stool risers can loosen over time. Um, the other option on this slide is the Dignity Lift. Now, this is quite a high-tech device, but it will go down straight onto the toilet. They have a nice purple toilet here for good contrast, but it goes down, and then as you need it, it has controls that you raise yourself up into that standing position. It's a very cool device. But one of the things, and I didn't put it on here, I've put it on other presentations, is a bidet. Um, having that having that bidet to help clean is really kind of like universal design, right? They make them to have front cleaning and back cleaning action. They make them that they can clean the toilet when the user is done. They can be just cool water or cool and warm water, depending on the kind you buy and how you set it up. Um, so that really, like, don't be hesitant to look into a bidet. Whether or not you use one yourself, it can be a great option for a lot of different disabilities. All right. I think we can be done with the toilet talk now. All right. How about let's talk about grooming. So we're going to start with dressing. Um, and I haven't labeled a lot of these pictures because they're pretty self-explanatory. So I did go ahead and label these because a long stick might not be totally self-explanatory. So the dressing stick is the first thing on the slide. And it's just a long wooden dowel with some bent metal ends. But you can use this configuration of angles to do a variety of tasks. You can push your shoe off, you can pull your pants up, push your pants off the bottom of your foot. There is a zipper often on one end you can use that to reach things to you or to zip. They say to pull up zippers, but I think that would be super awkward. But you can use this, like I said, just for a variety of tasks. There are simple things like long-handled shoe horns, um, just extending that reach so you don't have to bend down. Zipper pulls. Zippers are, if you think about it, they're almost all very small to grab. A zipper pull is an easy thing. You can use a variety of things as a zipper pull. I 3D print them. There's you can buy them on Amazon or Etsy. There's just a lot of options out there. They can be cute, they can be functional. You look up zipper pulls and you get a million kinds of cute ones. Um, and then the last picture I have is a sock aid. Um, you know, doing all the small tasks that it takes to put socks on, some of those can be very difficult, especially if you have arthritis or some other limiting condition. And so a sock aid might be just the device you need. There are also different devices for compression hose. Just a little FYI. All right, let's go on from here and talk about some hair care and other personal, well, putting on makeup. Okay, so the first image I have here is just a stand for a hair dryer. Um, if you have one hand use and you want to, comb and brush, I don't have enough hair to dry anymore, so I don't have to worry about these things, but plenty of folks do, right? Um, and also, if you're going somewhere, you want to dry your hair so you don't get sick when it's cold out. There are health reasons. Um, and so having a way to hold your hair dryer and be able to push it around to get it where you need to go, there are options like stands. Long-handled combs and brushes, or large grip combs and brushes are also out there and available. Um, the next image is a universal cuff that is holding a razor. Um, you know, um, Dealing with shaving, depending on your razor type, they can be small. Often, if you're shaving in the shower, it can be slippery. So having a universal cuff that will hold that razor in a secure location could be helpful. Also, there's different kinds of razors. Often men will use a what do they call an electric razor? So you can just rub it around and you don't have to deal with a lot of water. Um, so there's just whatever option works best for folks is the option that, we need to look at. And the last picture is a woman who is applying makeup, and she is using a device called Active Hands. Now, this device was not developed for makeup, um, but the cool thing about it is a grip aid that can do a million things. It was actually developed for folks with quadriplegia so they could lift weights. So it has a really secure hold holding weights. But it can also do these more detailed things like putting on makeup. So all kinds of grip aids out there, and a lot of them can be used for personal care when it comes to grooming. All right, let's keep going. And let's talk about some mobility options. And again, like I said, for the for this presentation, I'm focusing on transfers. Um, and so, when we think about where are we transferring from, and this is not just for people who cannot stand, but might have weakness, might be any kind of instability, whether it is in general or just time specific. Or just that those mobility limitations. So the first picture I have is a bed rail. Now I do want to say right up front that bed rails have recently had some scare around them. They have been like maybe trapping folks. So it is a device that you want to make sure that the user feels confident and comfortable, and they have enough mobility to be able to roll away from the bed rail as needed. And you wouldn't put a pillow between the bed rail and a person, things like that. Uh, so this bed rail that is pictured is just one big U with basically kind of another U at a 90-degree angle. So the horizontal piece goes between the mattress and box springs. The legs are adjustable, so it can fit between a lot of different mattress and box spring heights. Um, this one actually comes with a strap, and so the strap would go at the very back, the far part of the U that goes between the mattress and box spring, and hook onto the other side of the bed, the other side of the frame. And that way that would never pull out. It would always stay snug. But what I have always told people is if you are just using this bed rail to help you out of bed, then it is okay if it doesn't have a strap. If it comes with a strap, use the strap. But the ones that don't come with a strap, as long as you are only using them to get out of bed, and I'll talk about the other option in a second. So this bed rail needs to be placed appropriately. It needs to be on the top half of the body so that when the person sits up in bed, swings their legs out over the edge of the bed rail is not in the way. It is far enough up, like towards the shoulders, that it is not in the way of getting your feet and therefore your body out of bed. And then you just put your hand on it, you push down or pull back. Again, you're pulling back towards the mattress and you're in a standing position. Now, if somebody is outside of the bed, say in a wheelchair, and is using this bed rail to help them get to a standing position out of their wheelchair, it needs to have a strap, right? Absolutely needs to have that strap and it needs to be secure so that they are not pulling that bed rail out as they're using it as a standing aid. So that's the time that it really has to have a strap. And just for peace of mind, the strap is great. All right, enough on bed rails. And there's all different styles of these. I happen to like this style. Um, Down below is a transfer board, and this is just what it says. It is a board that is used to transfer from one seat to another. So you're hopefully doing a very horizontal transfer. I mean, it can be a couple of inches higher or lower, but if you're transferring up, know that that takes more energy, more work. You don't want the you want the board as small as possible to fit. You want to be able to transfer as short a distance as possible. They can come with grip on the bottom, which is really nice because then they're less likely to slide around as the person is sliding over. They would be for somebody who has good upper body arm strength because that person is generally doing that. The individual is generally doing their own transfer when using a transfer board. Okay. And you're going from like a wheelchair to a car, a wheelchair to a chair or back to their wheelchair or something like that. All right. Next one is the swivel seat. And this is, again, just what it says. It is like a Lazy Susan seat. The bottom has a little bit of grip on there, and this one has ball bearings. So you sit on the disc, and um, and that way, if you're turning from one position, say you want to sit down in just any chair and that's up to a table, you sit down and then you want to turn your legs under that table, that seat helps you do that turn. If you want to sit down outside of a car, swing your legs into the car, that seat helps you with that turn. They do make different styles. The ball bearing has the least resistance. The one that is just fabric is thinner, cheaper, but it does have a little bit more resistance. So whatever the need is. Above this, above the swivel seat is transport wheelchair. If you've listened to me talk, you've probably heard me talk about transport wheelchairs. They are one of my favorite things as a caregiver tool. Lots of folks use a standard manual wheelchair and then their caregiver, when they're going somewhere, or the person has to load that into the car. It's much heavier, much more awkward than a transport wheelchair, which folds up very simply. They're very light. They're they're easy to get in and out of a car. They fit behind the seat, in like in a back seat or in the trunk. Um, the main difference between the transport chair and a standard wheelchair is on the transport chair, all four wheels are small. Therefore, no one is, there's no big wheel or push ring to grab to move yourself. It is made to have somebody else push the person who's in it. They should not be used like a walker. If no one is in that seat, they should not be used as a support aid because they are very light and they would tip over. Um, so, great tool. You can use it independently by removing the footrests or putting the footrests in the upright position and walking with this. But they're not as easy to maneuver as a standard manual, even when an individual is using them. All right. The last thing I have, it's as high tech as we get for transfers, and unless you're going to a Hoyer lift, is a Turner Pro. So this is a disc that you stand on. You push your knees against the little knee rest, grab onto the handle, and then, as is pictured in here, a caregiver can turn your body while you stand on the disc. There are standing discs that you can do without the handle, but I think those are risky. But they're out there as well. But this one has that long handle so that it makes it much safer. All right. Probably talked you to death on transfers. Okay, we're running out of time. So we're going to talk about some meal prep. So going on to eating, which we all like, right? Um, I do have pictured here a cutting board. There are lots of cutting boards out there. This one would have spikes. It has a little cover for the spikes on this particular one. It has a high-low spot, so you can do things like put a grater on there. I think that's actually, I forget what they're called, but some like death trap that slices vegetables. Um, but the corner has a piece on each side because it's a spreader board, which is actually a really cool option. So you put a piece of bread in there, and then if you're spreading something kind of thick, like peanut butter, you're not just moving the bread across the counter. That bread is staying in that corner, and you can swipe towards those supports, turn the bread, swipe toward those supports, and yeah, the mandolin. Yeah, that's the kind of slicer that's pictured that seems like a dangerous thing. Anyway, sorry, I digress. But back to the spreader board. It's a nice option, especially for one-handed users. Um, so lots of different options with cutting boards. One of the things I love to talk about is contrast with cutting boards. If you have a white cutting board, get another color. If you're cutting a lot of white onions or white things, have that contrast there. Have a dark cutting board for light things and a light cutting board for dark things. Don't cut your tomatoes on a red cutting board. All right, that's just a little side note. The other kind of fun cutting board is the scissors. So it is basically you can, chop light kind of things with one hand with this scissor that is designed to be basically a vegetable chopper. But also great for folks who are nervous about chopping but still want to have some fresh things. I don't think it's going to cut things like meat very well. Um, maybe not a really thick carrot, but it's gonna do some tasks. Also a great way to start for folks who are nervous again about cutting and want to get some practice in there. Okay, would take two hands. The the red picture on the top is a jar with what is called a jar key or jar pop um, on the top, and all it does is breaks the seal of the jar. So it connects on the top of, it connects on the lid, and then you lever it up and it lets air in. So not great if your jar is going to get really messy and kind of reseal, but really great if the one part that's hard is just breaking that seal. This is a fantastic tool. I now can 3D print a very similar thing, so hit me up if you need one. All right. And I wanted to put in here the color-coded chef because it really is a well-created and curated set of tools and recipes that are great for learning to cook, getting used to using those measuring cups and spoons, really well-crafted tools. I don't know. I just think it's a nice set, and actually pretty reasonably priced. And the recipes go from very simple to quite complex. So you can end up with, a no-bake cookie or a lasagna, something like that. It's an interesting option for folks. All right, let's look at some dining. Let's look at actually eating. And again, there are hundreds, if not more, yes to star the recordings and the PowerPoints come out in a couple of weeks. Hundreds of different items that are available for dining. I'm going to point out the Pour Thing, which is just a device that would hold like a half gallon of milk or juice or a 2-liter bottle. It is tipped in this picture, and it is actually tipped in the wrong direction. I don't think it actually even goes in this direction. Because the idea is there's a little cutout at the top where the spout would stop, and you tip it the other direction, and that cutout piece will hold your soda or your juice or your milk, hold it in securely, and you can then pour just by tipping that forward and then putting your glass in the right spot, and it will pour so you don't have to hold a jug. It is kind of it's been around for a long time. It's got a fun name, P-O-U-R, Pour Thing. There are, at the top of this slide, there are Dyson coasters. So any really good anti-slip device can be really helpful for a variety of conditions. There's a rocker knife, not currently my favorite, but a tried and true. This is a T-grip handle rocker knife. I'm a big fan now of the Tot Chop, which is just a similar rocker knife. Next to that is Easy Hold. It is on a large grip fork, but the Easy Hold is a silicone band that becomes like a universal cuff. So you stick your hand in there, and then it will require zero grip to actually use that utensil. These can be put on, say, a comb or a brush or a toy or a marker. They can be put on anything. And there's a variety of sizes and even whole sizes. They can be put on a cup to make it more like a handled cup. The device above that is called the sup spoon, and it looks kind of like a pipe. It is a spoon with a small bowl at the end. And the idea with this is you can scoop up your food, and even if you have a fairly significant trimmer, if you hold that kind of upright, that food is staying inside. So even if you're just unstable or have spasticity, that food can stay inside while you get it from your plate to your mouth. And then the cute little kid here on this picture is pictured with a kneader eater. This is the manual form. They also have a robotic feeder, but this one is hydraulic. And so for folks who have limitations, but they can still reach out and have some movement, you can just kind of rest your hand on that bar and guide the bar, and it will gently lower down, and you can scoop your food and bring it to your mouth. There are some cool options from this company. Um, and then the very bottom one is just a stay and eat plate. It is a suction cup plate with it has two different sides. They're both sloped. Um, the side pictured has three compartments, one large, two smaller. The other side is just open. So if you know you're eating pancakes, you can put them on the big side. Or if you don't like your pancakes touching your syrup, you can put the smaller pancakes on this side and your syrup in a separate compartment. Whatever you need out there. This, when you push down, it does suction to the table. It is not great for folks who want to who want to throw their plates. This suction is not it's strong, but it's easy to release. So this is more for folks who understand they want their plate to stay where it is, or who are good with that. Like I said, not necessarily for the folks who want to toss their plate. Then there are lots of other great suction plates out there. Um, so those are some dining options. I think that could be, is that my last slide? Do I have, hope I'm work. Oh gosh, I forgot about health reminders. So we'll go through this. I did not do med planners because we've talked about those in the past. We're happy to talk about those if you have questions, but I did some different things, like the reminder app on your phone. It's a great way to keep those tasks, whether they are taking medication, maybe you're reminding yourself to start a new health routine, like you want to do yoga 3 times a week. So, you put it in a reminder on your phone. I did put in the MedMinder medication tracking app. There are lots of medication apps. Um, Look, like this one is free, but it has those in-app purchases, which may not be great for you or the person you're working with. So, check out those kinds of differences between the apps. Um, a to-do list, very simple, but if someone can tend to something like this, so you might put on there, walking the dog or taking your medication, or, taking 10 minutes to meditate on a to-do list. The timer wash and soap dispenser is just super fun. It is an automatic soap dispenser that tells you how long to like scrub your hands and when to rinse. And it has this really nice looking countdown timer on the front. And then it does not sing, but it has like a little sound to it. No, but it doesn't sing. And then there's the talking pill bottles, and there's even a Braille talking pill bottle. And there is what's the med station? There's lots of other things that can tell you about your medication. And then there are just a million different med planners. Each one has a different kind of specialty, depending on who you are and what your needs are, right down to how does it look. And because, taking medication, especially if it's new, is not something that everybody's really excited about. So having a med planner that maybe, looks nice or is appealing could actually help. All right. Angelina, is that my last slide? Oh, I have one recipe to share. I forgot. Okay, so a recipe for success is one whole person who has a task they would like to explore. One splash of information about their limitations, two pinches of information about their strengths and goals. And then 2 to 4 devices to try. Now, you just mix those first 3 ingredients together and add the devices one at a time until you come out with, of course, the perfect combination. And you can alter this recipe as you wish. All right. Ha, ha, ha. All right. I think that's it. So yes, any questions? I think I've tried to kind of answer them as they've popped up because, the way I
I
wrote.
have a question. If we can kind of go back, I was trying to get the diagram around that framework of the integrating services into supports to integrate throughout the life, where the circle had the community, and I'm not sure what else,
Did
as I was
you
trying to take notes. I
did you
want
just want to
that
see that
framework.
slide again?
Yes, I do.
Perfect. All right. 1 second.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have questions?
I have a question. It's Lisa Liss.
Hmm.
When I joined a couple minutes late, I heard you saying something about Medicaid. So if somebody wants one of these devices,
Yes.
are they ever covered by Medicaid? And if so, how do you make that happen?
Yes, and I will say not many of the devices on this list are covered by Medicaid. It is going to be mostly your mobility devices, your wheelchairs, and your Hoyer lifts, things like that. Um, the a lot of the things that I have shared are on the lower cost range of things. Um, any durable medical equipment, you can go to our website and find your closest reuse center. It's not an exhaustive list, it is just our partners. Um, but a lot of the durable medical equipment can be gotten through a reuse center, and you're welcome to reach out to me. Otherwise, there's not much funding for these devices. But you're always welcome to give us a call and see, because sometimes there are other funding sources that aren't general, but that could be very specific and could apply to you. So reach out to us.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Is there any way that you can give us your contact information to reach out to or to find
Yes,
your
absolutely.
site?
But it should be on the last slide after Angelina is done with everything else.
Yes, it is.
And if you go to our website, at.mo.gov, you can find anyone on the Missouri Assistive Technology staff. at.mo.gov. Or feel free to email me, smary@mo-at.org. Leanne, did you get your question?
Yeah, my question is specifically something about the pro turner sit to stand. That with that, who would be the best person, a physical therapist or an occupational therapist, to actually assess if that's a good option for someone and to provide training on that device?
Yeah, I think if your person, if your either client or family member is working with an OT or PT, that would be a great place to do the assessment. I don't personally have one because sometimes I would just say, oh, I'm happy to let you try one that I have. But yeah, I think an OT or a PT would be a great place to check out to make sure that was safe.
Thank you.
Okay, I think it looks like all of the other questions in the chat were answered. Did anybody else have any additional questions before we wrap up? All right. Well, with that, thank you, Scout, for presenting for us. Thank you all for being here. This is our the rest of the mod schedule for the year. We have our benefit series on the second Wednesday of every month from 12:30 to 1:30. Next one will be August 12th. That is how Medicare fits into long-term care. And then our next tech series will be on August 26th with the topic of adaptive crafting for all. As always, we will send out the slides and the recording afterwards, and the recording will also be posted to the Charting the Life course YouTube channel. And thank you all. Have a good one.